Hi there, my name is Matt Alschbach and I teach history here at Owensboro Community and Technical College. I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk to you about a really important issue, and it is that of academic integrity and plagiarism more specifically. Now, most students are familiar with the typical forms of plagiarism. I'm talking about things like copying and pasting from a website, passing off another person's work as your own. We're all pretty familiar with these forms of plagiarism, but plagiarism can actually be other things. Word-for-word reiterations taken from a textbook or a website or an article or another written source, and not properly citing or documenting that source. That is an example of plagiarism. Now, obviously, we should never be copying or pasting something from an internet source or copying something verbatim, that is word for word from a textbook or another source like that. But academic integrity is actually about more than that. It's really important to give other writers credit for their intellectual property, and we do this by consistently and clearly documenting our sources, not only in the body of a narrative or essay, but also in a separate works cited or bibliography page at the end of our narrative or essay. Now, in college, we encourage students to analyze a variety of sources: primary sources, secondary sources, books written by scholars, articles, etc., etc. And the hope is that when a student has to produce a term paper, a prepared written essay, that they'll take several weeks, that they'll bring all of that information together, that they'll synthesize that information into a coherent narrative or essay, an original essay or narrative. But understand, even if the work that you produce is your own, even if it's written in your own words, you still need to document where you drew that information from. You're drawing from these other sources, other people's intellectual property. So it's really important to bring that information together and to clearly and consistently document where you drew that information from. Now, I want to articulate very clearly that a direct quote is something very different from your original narrative. Now, a direct quote is something that is very helpful when you write an essay. So, for example, when you're producing an original narrative, you may want to reinforce and emphasize a point that you've made, and you can do that by using a direct quote, someone else's work, in order to kind of illustrate that point that you have made. So, anytime you use a direct quote, someone else's work, you need to document that as well. So, you need to document your own work, your original narrative. You also need to document any work that is someone else's. And I want to emphasize again that direct quotes should be used sparingly. It should be a very, very small portion of your overall essay or narrative. Consistency in documentation is really important. Now, typically, in college, we require what's called parenthetical notation, not always, but much of the time, and it's kind of specific to each class and each teacher, each discipline. But typically, it's what we call parenthetical notation. And so the idea is you open up a parenthesis, you provide the author's name, page number is really important as well. You close the parenthesis, and then the period goes on the outside. So again, the idea is that you're providing a path, a link, so that the reader, whether it be your professor, whether it be someone else who's reading your work, can go and find out precisely where you drew that information from. And they're able to do that because you provided a page number, because you provided a website, an article name, the information that is required in order to identify that source material. So again, you want to cite your sources within the body of your original narrative, and you want to have a separate works cited page or bibliography page at the end of your narrative. Let me emphasize again that every discipline is different. Some teachers prefer or require a particular type of documentation. They may want MLA. Another class might want Turabian, Chicago style. So it's important to read your syllabus, talk with your instructor if you're not sure as to what type of documentation they want, but that is really important. The idea behind citing your sources consistently, documenting your sources, is that you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your work, you're giving credit where credit is due. Thank you for your time.